Why does Python code sometimes wait forever even when the tasks are independent? In this video, you will build 10 real asyncio examples and see exactly how async and await make API calls, background tasks, and concurrent workflows faster. We will start with the core idea behind asyncio. Independent waiting can happen concurrently. The difference becomes obvious when we measure sequential and concurrent work side by side. When a dashboard refreshes, account data and notifications usually do not depend on each other. First, we write two simulated I/O calls, then run them sequentially and with asyncio.gather. Now we run the script and compare the timings. Let's break down why this works. The sequential version finishes one wait before starting the next, while gather lets both waits overlap. The slower operation sets the total time. Now let's show the best practice. Use concurrency only for independent operations, because that is when it saves time safely. If one result is needed to build the next request, await the first result before starting the dependent work. Asyncio becomes especially useful when a service needs data from several remote APIs. These next examples show concurrent HTTP requests and a safe limit for larger batches. A real service often collects several remote values before returning one response. We create one reusable client session and pass it to 3 fetch coroutines. Now we run the script and see all JSON results arrive within roughly one request window. Let's unpack the result. While one request is waiting on the network, the event loop gives another request time to progress. That is why the total duration is close to the slowest request, instead of the sum of all 3. Now let's show the best practice. Keep one client session for the whole workflow because it pools and reuses connections. The async with block also closes that session cleanly when the requests are done. Suppose we need metadata for hundreds of products, but the partner API allows only a small number of parallel requests. We wrap each job with a semaphore set to 3 and print the active count. Now we run the batch and watch jobs enter only when a slot is free. Let's break down why the count never reaches 4. Every coroutine is ready to run, but the semaphore grants only 3 permits. A finished job releases its permit, and then the next waiting job can start. Now let's show the best practice. Choose a conservative limit first because an async client can still overwhelm a remote service. Increase it only after checking API limits, latency, errors, and available connections. Concurrency is only useful when slow or flaky services are handled deliberately. Next, we add a timeout, targeted retries, and exponential backoff to one remote operation. A payment status check should not wait forever when the provider is slow. We give every attempt a short timeout, catch only timeout and connection failures, and increase the delay before each retry. Now we run the script and follow the recovery path. Let's unpack the output. The first attempt exceeds the 0.20 second limit, the second raises a temporary connection error, and the third succeeds. The backoff delays stop us from immediately hammering a struggling provider. Now let's show the best practice. Retry only failures that are likely temporary and only operations that are safe to repeat. Always cap the attempts and log the timeout value so an incident is easier to investigate. In batch workflows, waiting for results in input order can hide useful early progress. The final example processes each completed task as soon as it is ready. Preview generation is a great case for early progress updates because files finish at different times. We start every preview task, then iterate with asyncio as completed instead of awaiting them in file list order. Now we run it and print each result the moment it is ready. Let's break down the order. Trailer was listed first, but it takes the longest, so it appears last, as completed gives us the earliest available result, instead of making every update wait behind a slow job. Now let's show the best practice. Use completion order processing when each finished result can be handled independently. It is especially useful for progress displays, streaming pipelines, and incremental result storage. Next, let's build a small background pipeline. This pattern appears whenever work arrives in bursts, and a fixed set of workers needs to handle it safely. When image uploads arrive faster than storage can process them, a queue keeps the work organized. We enqueue 10 upload IDs, start 3 workers, and use none as a sentinel that tells each worker to stop. Now let's run the script and watch the workers share the uploads. Let's unpack why this finishes safely. Queue join waits until every item has a matching task done call, so we know the real upload work is complete before sending shutdown sentinels. The sentinels are also queue items, which is why we join once more before printing the final message. Now let's look at the production ready part. Use a bounded queue when uploads can spike. A maximum queue size slows the producer when workers are saturated, which protects memory and makes overload visible instead of hiding it in an endless backlog. Queues handle internal work. Now let's move to a network stream where records arrive gradually and the client must process each complete message as it appears. Live logs are not one big response. They arrive record by record. This local server writes 4 new line delimited log events while the client waits asynchronously for each complete line. Now we run it and watch the events appear one at a time. Let's break down the result. Readline pauses only this client coroutine until a new line arrives, so the event loop remains available for the server and any other work. When the server closes its writer, readline returns an empty value and the client exits the loop cleanly. Now let's show the best practice. Define exactly where one stream record ends before you write the client. New lines work well for logs, while other protocols may use a byte length or structured framing. Without an explicit boundary, a consumer cannot reliably tell whether it received a whole message. Async applications often need to call code that was never designed for an event loop. The key is keeping that blocking work away from the loop when it is I/O bound. A legacy report SDK might block on network or disk I/O, but your async service still needs to respond. We start a heartbeat, send the blocking report function to asyncio to thread, and then run the script. The continuing heartbeat shows that the event loop did not freeze. Let's unpack why the heartbeats keep appearing. To thread runs the synchronous function outside the event loop thread, while awaiting its result lets other coroutines make progress. The important detail is that the report function remains normal synchronous code, only the call site changes. Now let's show the best rule for choosing this tool. Use to thread for blocking I/O, such as a legacy SDK, file system call, or slow network client. If the function is CPU heavy, use a process pool or specialized worker system instead, because threads may still compete for Python's GIL. Background work needs a safe stop path. Cancellation is normal control flow in async applications, especially when a user leaves a page or aborts a request. Imagine a user cancels a large export after it has already started. This coroutine writes chunks, but its finally block always removes the temporary archive. Now we run it, request cancellation after a short delay, and watch the cleanup happen before the caller gets confirmation. Let's break down what happened. Cancel does not forcibly stop Python in the middle of a line. It asks the task to raise canceled error at its next await. That gives the coroutine a chance to run finally, release files or connections, and then let the cancellation continue upward. Now let's show the safest cancellation pattern. Catch canceled error only when you need to log or clean up, then immediately re-raise it. This is the best approach whenever a parent task, request handler, or shutdown routine must accurately know that the work was canceled. For related service calls, structured concurrency gives the whole group one clear lifetime. Python 3.11 task group is ideal when all results belong to one request or workflow. An order page may need customer, inventory, pricing, and fraud data at the same time. We create all 4 calls inside one task group, then run a success case followed by a fraud check failure case. Watch how the successful request produces a summary, while the failed request cancels work that is no longer useful. Let's unpack the failure run. Customer already completed, but the fraud check raised before inventory and pricing reached their finish times. Task group canceled those unfinished siblings, waited for that cancellation to settle, and then let us handle the runtime error exception group in one place. Now let's show the production-ready choice. Use task group when concurrent calls belong to one request, order, or workflow. It is better than creating detached tasks because success, failure, and cleanup all stay scoped to the same block, with no orphaned background work. You now have 10 practical asyncio patterns you can reuse in real Python projects. If this helped, like and subscribe to Dev Level Up, and tell me in the comments which Python topic you want to see in 10 real examples next.